You're asking for $1.5 trillion, unlimited money for bombs, but insufficient money for the American people, for their health care, their food, their housing. I don't know how this administration intends to defend those decisions to the American people.
Not unlimited bombs, Senator. I'm asking for the right bombs at the right time to ensure we can deter our adversaries into the future. And that's how this is a generational investment. And it was the previous administration that didn't fund this department.
The reason why they are so upset with you and this administration is because the words you have used in the past don't add up.
$1.5 trillion, not a few billion, but $1,500 billion, for a war Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed was already won. More than 30 times, he promised total and complete victory, insisting it would all be over within weeks. Yet the spending keeps climbing. While officials continue repeating words like obliterated, critics argue the real question isn't whether the bombs hit their targets. It's whether taxpayers can keep footing the bill for an ever-growing military budget while many Americans struggle with everyday costs.
Secretary Hegseth, you're requesting billions of dollars in supplemental funding for a war that you said would last for weeks and that the president has no plan or ability to end. At the same time, this still unauthorized and extremely unpopular war has caused gas, diesel, fertilizer, and other essentials that New Yorkers and our farmers need across the country, and has become much more expensive. So how do I go back to New York, and what would you say to them who are seeing their health care bills rise because massive cuts to Medicaid? They've seen their grocery and gas bills rise, and this unpopular and unauthorized war abroad is a higher priority to this administration than their ability to feed their families and provide health care to their loved ones who are sick.
Well, Senator, you're talking about political trade-offs, and our job is to deliver for the United States military and the President of the United States. And we look at the cost of a nuclear Iran, and we want to prevent that for future generations. And that requires funding and supplementals and this budget and next generation capabilities. And that's why we're here today to request some of that to ensure we can ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon.
So you're essentially saying you're asking for literally $1.5 trillion for a war that President Trump said he already won. You're asking for $1.5 trillion, unlimited money for bombs, but insufficient money for the American people, for their health care, their food, their housing, and our farmers, Secretary Rollins, who we have cut SNAP program. We are not funding the losses from emergencies that have happened in blue states, particularly when we had frost.
That's
False.
not true.
False. You're not funding it. But back to you, Secretary Hegseth.
And I would like to respond to the fertilizer and the gas.
Have your chance, Secretary Hegseth.
There's no reason to be rude.
You are asking for unlimited money for bombs when people can't feed their families. And I don't know how this administration intends to defend those decisions to the American people.
Not unlimited bombs, Senator. I'm asking for the right bombs at the right time to ensure we can deter our adversaries into the future. He called it a political trade-off. In other words, bombs first, kitchen tables second. While Trump continues declaring victory, Pete Hegseth keeps asking for another massive defense budget, and allies like Kash Patel keep reinforcing the message. Critics argue that, for many Americans, soaring military spending contrasts sharply with the rising cost of everyday essentials. And if this hearing proved anything, it's that the debate is only just beginning. And that's how this is a generational investment. And it was the previous administration that didn't fund this department.
The reason why they are so upset with you and this administration is because the words you have used in the past don't add up. About Iran specifically, you said that we had obliterated, quote unquote, Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. The president made the same claim. Yet 8 months later, in February of 2026, the president launched an active war claiming Iran was within 2 weeks of having a weapon. So when you say two very different things, the American people don't know who to believe or what to believe. They just know they can't afford their health care, they can't afford their food, they can't afford housing, and our farmers are continuing to suffer. So, which is true? Was it obliterated or wasn't it? What's the status?
The nuclear sites under Midnight Hammer were obliterated, but Iranians foolishly continued to attempt to pursue nuclear capabilities, which is why we destroyed their defense industrial base and so many of the other capabilities to ensure they can't get to a nuclear weapon. So we're staying laser focused on the objective, and you're trying to make campaign commercials.
No, we're not.
That's fine.
So listen to this. You also say that you made the missile program, quote, destroyed and made combat ineffective. Quote, Iran's entire ballistic missile production capacity, every company that builds every component of those missiles has been functionally defeated and destroyed, and that the missile program, existing stockpiles were depleted and decimated, almost completely ineffective. So why are there missiles left to hit Jordan and result in the loss of life of our brave men and women?
As we stated from the beginning, the Iranian defense industrial base is effectively gone. But they do have underground facilities because they're the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, and they've spent 47 years trying to hide their missiles under mountains, just like their nuclear capabilities, because they would like to get a nuclear weapon to wield it against us.
Of the war to believe, because it's either over or it's not over. It's within 2 weeks or it's not 2 weeks. We have no missiles or we have missiles, and that consternation is why so many New Yorkers are perplexed, stressed out, and find this war to be incredibly unpopular because they don't understand the choices that the president's making. They don't agree with those choices. Secretary Rollins, so you have cut over 160,000 New Yorkers have been kicked off SNAP.
Listen, obliterated. That was the word repeated again and again. President Trump used it, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth echoed it. Yet months later, the administration argued Iran remained a serious enough threat to justify military action. Critics say those two messages are difficult to reconcile. The explanation shifted. Iran kept rebuilding. Underground facilities remained intact, and previously weakened capabilities were still active. But if that's the case, opponents ask whether the earlier claims of total success were overstated. Meanwhile, officials continued describing enemy arsenals as destroyed, depleted, and combat ineffective, even as attacks linked to Iranian-backed groups continued to threaten U.S. forces. Critics argue the messaging has focused more on projecting victory than addressing these inconsistencies. When questions are raised, the response often turns to politics instead of the underlying facts. As a result, Americans are left weighing competing official narratives while seeking clear answers about the true state of the conflict.
What do you have against hardworking New Yorkers, children who need SNAP, and seniors who need SNAP?
Well, first of all, diesel is down under Biden versus today, 581 versus 480. Gas is down from Biden today from 484 to 386 today. Fertilizer is down 56% from Biden highs.
Prices
so this
are
narrative
higher than when you took office.
Well,
all of those prices are higher than when you took office. So you are not making life better for New York farmers.
That is not true, Senator. And let me tell you what New York is stressed out about is the fact that your state is taking prime farmland and turning it into solar farms. That is absolutely inexcusable. I have visited the New York farmers two times in upstate New York.
Has expired.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to our witnesses here today. I want to begin by first echoing my colleagues' comments that we've heard throughout the hearing here and join them in mourning the loss of American service members who were killed in action these last few days. My thoughts are with their families, with a service member who remains missing, and with all those injured during the strikes. And I will continue to pray for their families. Secretary Hegseth, over the course of the war with Iran, I have repeatedly expressed concerns regarding the administration's lack of a winning strategy and repeated contradictions about the state of the war.
The claim was that 160,000 New Yorkers could lose food assistance. The question was straightforward. The response wasn't. Instead of addressing the impact on families, officials pointed to inflation during the Biden years and shifted the conversation to solar farms. Critics argue that when people ask about putting food on the table, changing the subject doesn't answer the question.
Frankly, it doesn't help that you and your president continues to mislead the American people. You and the president have repeatedly said that the war, as we've heard over and over again, is almost over or already won. In fact, the president alone has said the war is almost over more than 30 times. On March 1st, the president said, we'll be done in 4 or 5 weeks. On March 9th, he said the war was very complete. On April 8th, he declared total and complete victory, 100%, no question about it. On the same day, you declared Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield, a capital V military victory by any measure. And yet today, July 21st, we have soldiers whose remains are sadly going to be returned to their deeply grieving families tomorrow. Clearly, the war is not over yet. After months of conflict, our strategy to win remains unclear. I have long said the United States has the strongest military in history in the world, and I have no doubt that our brave service members can execute any mission and prevail in any battle. But without a clear winning strategy, we're at risk of being in another forever war that'll put our service members in continued harm's way and continue to cost taxpayers billions of dollars. Secretary Hegseth, despite your failure to win this war, you are back now before Congress asking for almost $70 billion in additional funding. You're asking the American people for a blank check because, once again, the Trump administration's efforts have been an utter and complete failure to win this war to this point. So my question for you, sir, is how is your strategy different than what we've seen in the past? So far, we have not seen a strategy that's been successful. You mentioned nuclear material as the primary goal of the war. It still exists. We haven't dealt with that issue yet. You talk about the destruction of missiles, and yet the missiles that we saw hit recent targets are actually somehow more lethal, more deadly, more maneuverable than what we have seen in the past. So they're obviously improving their munitions. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed, reminding everybody it was open before the war. Prices were lower for everybody until the war, and it still remains closed. And of course, tragically, people, service members, our war fighters, who we care deeply about, are still dying. So what's different? Mr. Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth.
I think your characterization of this incredible effort as a failure is reckless. And I think it's irresponsible. And I think it smears the sacrifice of the troops that are out there making on behalf of the American people to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Shame on you and others who call this a quagmire and a failure, and then you want to turn around and say you support the warfighter. Either you do or you don't.
Is the nuclear material still there,
I can get you a ticket out to CENTCOM and talk to what those Americans are doing, and how committed they are to this effort, and how they want to ensure that Iran never threatens their families with a nuclear weapon. That's the kind of intensity that our warfighters have about making sure that Iran isn't capable of doing that.
Secretary Hegseth, if you listen to my comments, you would have heard me say how amazing our warfighters are.
I heard failure. And the word I heard exactly what you said.
I will tell you how I use the word failure, because I use the word failure to their leaders. You, sir, are the failure, not the men and women who are on that front line, not the men and women who hold up their honor with distinction. But if there's a lack of a winning strategy, they're in harm's way. Their leaders have failed them. And that's what's happening. We have political leadership. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a long-term plan to actually win this war. Win the war. The men and women are going to be able to do it, but they need to have leadership. When will you show leadership?
We have leadership.
When will you show leadership?
Why don't you show some leadership and stand up to your fellow Democrats who won't fund the troops, who stand and play partisan politics while you don't the money? You want to stand up here and talk about the troops? You won't show any political courage to actually fund our department because you have Trump derangement syndrome and can't actually commit to anything meaningful. So I put this on you, Senator.
Secretary Hegseth, you have trillions, you have over $1 trillion, you're asking for $1.5 trillion. It's not a question of money, it's a question of leadership and understanding what it takes to actually win.
Political cowardice of Democrats who won't fund the troops.
Senator's time has expired.
President Trump declared the war effectively won more than 30 times, promising total and complete victory. Yet the conflict, its costs, and its consequences continue. Critics argue that when those contradictions are raised, the response is rarely a direct answer. Instead, the conversation shifts, and the focus turns to the person asking the question. The same criticism extends beyond national security. When lawmakers raised concerns about SNAP reductions that could affect thousands of New Yorkers, opponents say the discussion moved away from the impact on working families, children, and seniors, instead focusing on inflation under previous administrations and unrelated policy issues. Critics describe this as a consistent pattern. When earlier claims no longer match later events, the explanation changes rather than the original statement being acknowledged. Assertions of obliterated become claims that adversaries rebuilt capabilities. Questions about food assistance become debates over energy policy. And difficult questions are dismissed as political attacks instead of being answered directly. The broader concern, they argue, is not only about defense spending or social programs, but about accountability. Americans deserve clear explanations when policies involve major trade-offs between military priorities and domestic needs. Whether the issue is war, federal spending, or assistance programs, critics say leaders should address contradictions openly rather than changing the subject. For many observers, the hearing wasn't defined by the size of the budget or the rhetoric surrounding it. It was defined by what they see as a reluctance to give straightforward answers when confronted with difficult questions.